The sky above Brighton Harbor was a cold bruise of gray and silver. Waves slammed against the pier like fists of an angry god, and through the rain stood Elena Moore, clutching a faded envelope that smelled faintly of salt and old paper. She'd buried her mother 3 weeks ago. The letter had arrived the next day, from a solicitor she'd never heard of. Inside, one sentence changed everything. You have inherited the vessel, the Seraphine, moored at Brighton Harbor, registered under your late father's name, Malik Al-Raif. Elena didn't know the name. She'd grown up believing her father had died before she was born, a British dockworker lost at sea. Now, staring at the corroded hull of the Seraphine, she realized her life had been a lie wrapped in salt and silence. The yacht was enormous but broken, paint peeling like old parchment, rope stiff with age, windows clouded by years of neglect. It looked more like a ghost than a vessel. A voice broke through the rain. "You shouldn't be here alone in this weather," said a man, his accent low and smooth, Arab refined. He was tall, in a dark trench coat, his shoes too clean for this place. He looked at the yacht, then at her as though measuring something unseen. "That boat has stories," he said quietly, "and debts." Elena frowned. "You knew my father?" The man hesitated. Rain streaked across his face as he adjusted his cufflinks, gold, engraved with Arabic script. Everyone in Al-Raif shipping knew Malik. He was a complicated man. Her heart twisted. Al-Raif. That was the same name on the inheritance papers. "Wait," she said. "You're from the same company?" "I was," he replied, "until I bought it." She stared. "You bought the company?" He nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. "Zaydan Al-Raif," he said, finally. "I'm his son." For a moment, Elena couldn't breathe. The wind howled through the masts, rattling old ropes like bones. Her half-brother stood before her. An Arab billionaire she had never known existed. "If you came for money," Zaydan said evenly, "you won't find it here. The yacht hasn't moved in 30 years. It's worthless." But something flickered behind his calm eyes. Not just warning, but fear. Elena felt it too. Something about the ship called to her. The rusted door to the lower deck was padlocked, and the keys were missing from the cabin. Yet the lock had fresh scratches, as if someone had tried to open it recently. She turned to Zaydan. "Then why did someone try to break in?" He froze. "Because," he murmured, "some things Malik buried were never meant to resurface." Thunder cracked over the sea, a sound that felt almost like a warning. Elena didn't move. She looked back at the yacht, her inheritance, her curse, her secret, and whispered, "Then we're about to find out what my father left behind." As lightning flared across the harbor, Zaydan's gaze darkened, a storm behind calm eyes. "You have no idea what you've inherited," he said softly. "And if you open that hull, it might not just change your life. It could rewrite everything my family built." The tide rose higher, waves slamming against the pier, as though the sea itself was fighting to keep its secret buried. The next morning, Brighton's harbor shimmered beneath a washed-out sun. The storm had left behind a metallic calm, gulls circling, ropes creaking, and the faint hum of the sea licking against the pier. Elena arrived before dawn, her breath fogging in the air. The yacht loomed before her, silent and stubborn as a tomb. She wore her late mother's wool coat, frayed at the cuffs, and held a small crowbar she'd borrowed from the harbor maintenance shed. She wasn't supposed to be here. The authorities had marked the Seraphine as under legal review. But she couldn't stop thinking about Zaydan's words. Some things Malik buried were never meant to resurface. When she reached the lower deck door, the padlock glinted under the morning light, scarred, rusted, but not ancient. Someone had tampered with it recently. She wedged the crowbar into the gap, her hands trembling, and pried until the metal shrieked open. The smell hit her first: oil, seawater, and something old like preserved leather. A dim staircase spiraled downward into darkness. Halfway down, her flashlight flickered, once, twice, then steadied. The lower hold was surprisingly dry. Rows of crates lay stacked neatly, untouched by rot, marked with fading ink. Al-Raif Maritime Consortium, 1967. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Dad, what were you doing?" She opened the first crate. It was filled with antique navigational instruments, brass compasses, sextants, old maps in oilcloth. Harmless enough. But the second crate made her freeze. Inside were bars of dull gray metal, wrapped in cloth, stamped with numbers and Arabic script. "Silver," said a voice from behind her. She spun around. The flashlight beam caught Zaydan standing in the doorway, immaculate as before, though his coat now carried the scent of sea air and sleeplessness. "You followed me," she snapped. "You left the gate unlocked," he said simply, "and if someone saw you here, they'd think you were stealing." Elena lifted a bar from the crate. It was heavy cold. "What is this?" "You said this yacht was worthless." He walked closer, his eyes sharp, scanning the crates like a man staring at ghosts. "Because that's what I was told," he murmured. "My father's last records showed this vessel as decommissioned. But these," he tapped a silver bar with his gloved finger, "these were supposed to have vanished in 1972. Elena frowned. "Vanished? How can something like this vanish?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for another crate, smaller, older, and when he opened it, a bundle of brittle papers fell out, stamped "Confidential, Al-Raif Holdings." Inside were shipping manifests, photographs, and letters in Arabic and English. One photo showed a younger Malik Al-Raif standing beside Zaydan's father, shaking hands with a man in a British naval uniform. Another photo showed the Seraphine, its deck loaded with boxes identical to the ones now before them. Zaydan's jaw tightened. "This wasn't cargo," he said quietly. "It was payment." "Payment for what?" she whispered. He didn't respond. Instead, he picked up a letter yellowed with time. His eyes scanned the Arabic handwriting, and suddenly his expression changed. The color drained from his face. "It can't be," he breathed. This was never supposed to exist." He handed her the letter. She couldn't read Arabic, but one name stood out in English: UK Defense Procurement Confidential Transfer, and below it, the signature Malik Al-Raif. "Are you saying my father was smuggling weapons?" she asked, her voice cracking. "No," Zaydan said softly. "I'm saying he was laundering power." The yacht creaked as though something inside was shifting. The light above them flickered. From somewhere deep below, a metallic clang echoed. Once, then again. Elena froze. "Did you hear that?" Zaydan's eyes narrowed. "We're not alone." He turned off his flashlight. The darkness swallowed them whole. Then footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming from the far end of the hold. Zaydan motioned for silence and pulled a small flashlight from his coat, aiming it toward the noise. For a split second, the beam caught a figure, someone ducking behind the engine block, before vanishing into shadow. "Who's there?" Zaydan called, his voice sharp, commanding. Silence. Then the faint sound of water dripping and the creak of a hatch opening above them. The intruder was escaping. Zaydan bolted toward the ladder. Elena followed, heart pounding. They burst onto the deck, the morning light blinding, but the pier was empty save for a single boot print in the mud and a running engine sound fading down the street. "They knew we'd find it," Zaydan said grimly. "And now they're cleaning up." He looked at the crates again, then at her. "Elena, what's buried here isn't just money. It's proof. My father didn't build his empire alone, and someone's willing to kill to keep that truth buried." Elena clutched the letter to her chest, her heart pounding against the paper. "Then we find everything," she said. "Every lie, every name. I've already lost my mother. I won't lose the truth too." Zaydan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time his guarded composure cracked. "You have his fire," he whispered, "but you have no idea how dangerous that inheritance really is." Night returned to Brighton Harbor like a cloak of ink. The pier was silent now, only the hum of distant ships and the hiss of rain whispering against metal. Inside the yacht's small cabin, a dim bulb flickered above a table strewn with documents, maps, letters, manifests, and the single name that made Zaydan's blood run cold. Sir Donovan Hale. Elena watched him pace. He looked more like a man at war, with his past than a billionaire. The sharp lines of control were still there, the quiet authority, the careful speech, but his hands trembled when he picked up his father's letter again. "Hale was a partner in my father's London branch," Zaydan said. "He vanished after 1973, taking several files with him. MI5 opened an investigation, then sealed it. I thought it was over." He looked up at her. "But if Hale's name is in these papers, it means he never left. He's been watching." Elena frowned. "Watching who? You?" Both of us, he said quietly. The moment you unlock that door, whoever's protecting this secret knew. A sudden knock rattled the cabin door. 3 slow taps, deliberate. Elena froze. Zaydan's hand went instinctively to the drawer beside him, pulling out a small, polished pistol. It wasn't bravado, it was fear sharpened by experience. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The door creaked open, and a man stepped inside, drenched from rain, gray-haired, wearing a Black Harbor jacket. His face was rugged, but his eyes were sharp, watchful. "You're not easy to find, Mr. Al-Raif," the man said calmly. "Especially when you're digging up things the world forgot." Zaydan's tone hardened. "Who sent you?" The stranger smirked faintly. "Let's just say I'm the one who used to keep this harbor quiet. My name's Mason, Harbor Security. Or it was before someone paid me to forget this yacht even existed." He stepped closer, his boots leaving wet prints on the floor. "You don't want what's in that cargo hold," Mason continued. "That ship carries blood on its hull. Hale made sure of it." Elena's voice trembled. "What do you mean, blood?" Mason's gaze drifted to her. "Your father didn't just move silver, miss. He moved people. Refugees. Scientists. Names that never appeared in records, all under the Al-Raif flag. Some disappeared forever." Zaydan's jaw tightened. "That's not true. My father built a shipping empire, not a trafficking ring." "Then ask yourself," Mason said quietly, "why this ship was registered under a false name for 30 years, and why someone broke in last night." He tossed a small object onto the table, a military-grade tracker, its light blinking faintly red. "Found that under your deck," he said. "You've been marked since you touched that lock." Elena stared at the tracker, her throat dry. "They're watching us right now." Mason nodded. "And if you're smart, you'll walk away. The last man who tried to expose this network died in a fire off Marseille. His ship sank before rescue arrived." Zaydan's voice dropped to a whisper. "You mean Malik?" The older man's eyes flickered. "He was your father, wasn't he? Then you already know." Elena stepped forward, tears stinging her eyes. "You're saying my father was murdered?" Mason hesitated. "Let's just say ships don't burn themselves with sealed cargo holds. I was there that night. We pulled fragments of the hull, the same markings as the Seraphine. He wanted to make things right. Someone made sure he never did." The cabin fell silent, except for the rain. Zaydan sat slowly, his hand over his mouth, grief and rage colliding in his expression. For years, he built his empire on his father's legacy, the charity foundations, the maritime museums, the spotless family reputation. And now, all of it hung by a thread made of lies. Elena turned to him, voice shaking but fierce. "You can still make it right, Zaydan. Expose them. Show the world what your father died for. And destroy everything he built," he snapped. "Every employee, every family tied to Al-Raif shipping. Do you have any idea what you're asking?" "Truth doesn't destroy," she said softly. "Lies do." The words hung between them, sharp, unrelenting. Mason exhaled and stepped toward the door. "If you're serious about finding answers, there's a man in London who can help you. He used to handle Hale's accounts. But be warned, he's not easy to reach. He'll only talk if he thinks you're one of them." "What's his name?" Zaydan asked. "Dr. Ezra Kell," Mason replied. "You'll find him where the city forgets to look beneath it." Then Mason turned and vanished into the rain, his footsteps fading into the echo of the tide. Elena stared after him. "Do you trust him?" "No," Zaydan said, "but I believe him." He turned to the crates again, his reflection trembling in the metal of the silver bars. "If my father died trying to reveal the truth, then I'll finish what he started." He reached for his coat. "Pack what you need. We leave for London tonight." Elena's heart raced. "And if they're watching us?" He gave a faint, humorless smile. "Then it's time they saw what happens when an Al-Raif stops running." The London night was all glass and motion. Headlights sliding over wet asphalt, the hum of traffic weaving through the mist. A black Maybach glided through the rain-slick streets of Canary Wharf, its tinted windows reflecting the city's cold glow. Inside, silence ruled. Elena sat beside Zaydan, her eyes fixed on the skyline. He looked straight ahead, unblinking, a man unraveling a history that refused to stay buried. "Are you sure this man will talk?" she asked. "He'll talk," Zaydan said, voice low. "He's been waiting for someone to ask the right question." The car turned off the main road, descending into the city's underbelly, a forgotten industrial quarter filled with shuttered warehouses and echoing rain. At the end of a narrow lane stood a small iron door, half hidden behind ivy and scaffolding. Zaydan knocked once. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly man in a tweed coat and cracked spectacles, Dr. Ezra Kell. He looked like someone who hadn't seen daylight in years. "Ah," he rasped, "the Al-Raif heir and the daughter of the one who defied him." Elena frowned. "You knew my father?" Dr. Kell gave a thin smile. "I handled the accounts no one was meant to see." Malik Al-Raif was the only man who questioned where the money came from. When he tried to cut the ties, they cut his anchor instead. He led them through the door into a basement filled with stacks of ledgers, typewritten reports, and old radio equipment. Dust danced in the flickering lamplight. "You said you wanted to know about the $15 million, Kell said, sitting behind an oak desk. "It wasn't treasure. It was compensation." "For what?" Zaydan asked. Kell reached into a file drawer and pulled out a faded document stamped government property, confidential exchange, 1968. "This," he said, tapping the page, "was an off-the-record operation. Hale's group brokered a trade between several defense contractors and foreign intermediaries. Weapons for influence, shipping routes for silence. But Malik discovered the shipments were being rerouted, carrying refugees, children, experimental cargo. He threatened to expose it. Elena's breath caught. So they killed him." Kell nodded. "They made it look like a fire, then paid off every witness. The $15 million was the final transfer, meant to vanish into a phantom account. But Malik hid it instead, locked inside the Seraphine. He knew someone would come looking one day." Zaydan's voice was tight. "And Hale?" "Still alive," Kell said. "Still protected. He reinvented himself under a new name. He's now Lord Donovan Hale, advisor to the Maritime Trade Council." Elena slammed her hand on the desk. "He's part of the government?" "Part of everything," Kell said simply. "If you confront him, you'll be fighting an empire built on shadows. But if you expose him, you'll burn the empire itself." A sharp sound interrupted them, the echo of a floorboard creaking overhead. Zaydan's head snapped up. "We're not alone." Kell's eyes widened. "They found you faster than I expected." Before another word could pass, the glass above the stairwell shattered. A flashbang burst into light, blinding, deafening. Elena screamed as Zaydan pulled her to the ground, shielding her. Gunmetal footsteps thundered down the stairs. 3 men in black suits, masked, weapons drawn. Zaydan's instincts took over. Calm precision beneath chaos. He shoved a filing cabinet over as cover and fired a single warning shot. The attackers froze, not expecting resistance. Zaydan's voice was steady. "Who sent you?" "Hale." No answer. One of them tossed a smoke grenade and backed away through the broken doorway. Within seconds, they were gone, ghosts in the London fog. When the smoke cleared, Kell was gone too. His chair overturned, papers scattered. But on the desk, something remained, a small flash drive, wrapped in old cloth, marked with a single symbol, the Al-Raif family crest. Elena picked it up, trembling. "He knew they'd come. He left this for you." Zaydan stared at the symbol, his reflection trembling in the metal. His father's seal, his blood, his burden. This is what he died protecting," he said. He turned to Elena, eyes burning with quiet fury. "We're going to end this, but we'll do it my way." "Your way?" she asked. Publicly, he said. In the light. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, their red glow staining the wet pavement. The city was waking, but so was the truth. Zaydan glanced once more at the shattered window. "They've been hunting ghosts," he whispered. "Now the ghosts are hunting them." The ballroom at Clarendon Hall shimmered with power, crystal chandeliers raining light upon politicians, financiers, and the scent of old money polished to perfection. It was a gala hosted in honor of global maritime transparency, an ironic title for an event sponsored by the very man who thrived in its absence. Lord Donovan Hale stood near the stage, white hair swept neatly back, tuxedo crisp, eyes gleaming like cut ice behind a polished smile. Cameras loved him. Corruption did too. He raised a glass of champagne to a foreign ambassador and laughed softly, unaware that the son of Malik Al-Raif had just entered the room. Zaydan walked in without hesitation. The crowd parted as if by instinct, drawn to the quiet authority in his stride. No one noticed Elena slipping behind him, her simple black dress concealing a hidden recording device pinned at the collar. Every detail was planned, every step rehearsed, every second dangerous. Remember, Zaydan murmured under his breath, "We go in as guests, not accusers, until he exposes himself." Elena nodded, her pulse pounding in her ears. "And if he doesn't, then I'll make him." The orchestra swelled, violins cutting through the air like threads of glass. They approached Hale slowly, timing it with the applause that followed a toast. Hale turned, his face momentarily frozen in recognition. "My word," he said with a careful smile. "Zaydan Al-Raif, I didn't expect you here tonight. I was told your interests had drifted east." Zaydan returned the smile, his tone cordial but sharpened. "They drift wherever the truth takes them, Lord Hale." A ripple of curiosity spread through nearby guests. Hale's jaw tightened just slightly. "Truth," he echoed lightly. "You sound like your father." Zaydan's eyes flicked to Elena, then back to him. "You knew my father better than most. I imagine you remember the Seraphine." Hale's hand froze midair, the glass of champagne trembling just faintly. Then came that polished politician's grin again. "Ah, the old ship. Such a tragedy, that fire. I remember reading about it." "You didn't read it," Zaydan said, his voice suddenly cold. "You ordered it." The orchestra faltered. Conversations dipped. Heads turned. Hale chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Careful, young man. Accusations like that can drown a legacy." Zaydan leaned closer, his tone low, precise. "It already drowned one. My father's." He stepped back, pressing a small remote in his pocket. Across the ballroom, hidden speakers came alive. A crackle, then a recording. The crowd froze as an old voice echoed through the room. Malik Al-Raif's voice, trembling but resolute. "They're using the cargo routes to move money and lives. Hale's arranging it all. The ministry knows. If anything happens to me, the evidence is sealed in the Seraphine. Let truth be my witness." Gasps rippled through the hall. Guests turned toward Hale. Reporters reached for their phones. Elena stood by the staircase, recording everything. The hidden microphone caught every reaction, every flicker of fear across Hale's carefully managed face. "You think you can humiliate me?" Hale hissed under his breath. Zaydan's calm was unbreakable. "Not humiliate," he said softly. "Unmask." Hale tried to recover, raising his voice for the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is an outrage, a manipulated audio from decades ago, a personal vendetta." "Then explain this," Zaydan interrupted. He motioned toward the projector screen that lowered behind the stage, displaying the image of an official document bearing Hale's original signature, verified by the very encryption key found on the flash drive Dr. Kell left behind. Every line of a ledger glowed under the ballroom light. Unregistered transfer, $15 million, Al-Raif Holdings /UK Defense Procurement. The music had stopped. So had Hale's breath. "You built an empire on the silence of the dead," Zaydan said, voice steady. "Tonight they speak." Cameras flashed. Guests began to whisper, first confusion, then disbelief, then outrage. Elena caught Hale's eyes, her voice trembling but clear. "My father wasn't a traitor. He was a man trying to save lives you buried in paperwork." Hale's mask cracked at last. "You think you won? You've exposed one document. The rest are gone." Zaydan's expression darkened. "No," he said. "They're already in the hands of the press. Every file, every shipment log, every signature. You erased my father's name. Now the world will erase yours." Security moved toward Hale, and as they did, he threw one last venomous glare at Zaydan. "You'll regret this, boy. You've destroyed your own fortune." Zaydan's gaze was like steel. "Then I'll rebuild it on truth." He turned away, the hall erupting in shouts, cameras, and chaos. Hale's empire, decades of deception, began to crumble in real time beneath chandeliers of glass and power. Outside, rain began to fall again, softer now, as if the city itself was exhaling. Elena followed him into the night, her heart pounding. "It's over," she said softly. Zaydan looked up at the skyline, London lights shimmering on the wet pavement. "No," he said. "It's only over when my father's name is cleared in every record he was erased from." He turned to her, eyes weary but alive. "And you're not a poor single mother anymore. You're an heir to something he left behind. Integrity." Elena smiled faintly through her tears. "Then, let's finish what he started." Zaydan nodded, the weight of justice in his voice. "Tomorrow we face the board. The world deserves to know who Malik Al-Raif really was." They walked down the marble steps as the rain washed the city clean, two souls carrying a legacy finally unchained. The marina was drenched in silence, broken only by the soft hum of waves slapping against the docked yachts. Lena stood barefoot on the deck of the Marlowe Star, wind in her hair, eyes fixed on the horizon, a woman who had gone from forgotten single mother to the quiet owner of a hidden empire. Kareem Al-Raif stood beside her, hands in his pockets, dressed in a simple white shirt. No boardroom, no security, no formality, just him and the woman whose courage had rewritten his understanding of wealth. "Kareem, you remind me of my mother," he said softly. "She built her strength from ashes. The world called her poor, but they didn't see the gold in her silence." "Lena, I didn't need gold," she smiled faintly. "Just someone to believe the wreck I found was worth saving." Kareem turned toward her. "Then perhaps," he murmured, "we both needed the same thing, a reason to remember what humanity looks like when it's not for sale." She laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that comes after years of holding one's breath. Around them, workers were restoring the yacht, but under Kareem's orders, nothing would be sold. Instead, the yacht would become a memorial foundation for seafarers and families who'd lost everything. Named after Lena's son, the Atom Foundation. Days later, journalists flooded the marina. The world learned the truth that the rusty yacht a struggling mother bought was in fact the key to exposing a decades-old laundering ring. Kareem didn't just fund the restoration. He used his power to bring justice, seizing accounts, protecting Lena's rights, and ensuring every stolen dollar went to rebuilding the lives it had destroyed. Lena, overwhelmed, tried to thank him, but he stopped her. "Kareem, don't thank me. The world needs people like you, who still believe in finding light in ruins. I only followed your courage." As she watched him leave the dock, his silhouette against the setting sun, she realized something profound. The true wealth he carried wasn't in his billions, but in the moral strength that refused to let injustice win. Power, when guided by truth, becomes redemption. And sometimes it takes the forgotten, the tired, the desperate, the underestimated to remind the powerful of what real value is. A rusty yacht, a grieving mother, and a billionaire who remembered that justice is not about restoring what's lost, but about lifting those who were never seen. Because in a world blinded by wealth, the rarest treasure is integrity, and it shines brightest when found in the hands of those who once had nothing.